I learned at that age, what does it take to be the best at anything you choose to do? And that's 110%, right? And as for me as a 13, I didn't do the parties or whatever friends or whatever most teenagers do. I did correspondence, and I didn't train 7 days a week, twice a day. I trained 7 days a week, 3 times a day. But by following that principle, lasering in and focus 110%, I was a provincial champion, 2-time national champion, North American champion. And as Ellen Chen predicted, at the age of 17 years old, I was undefeated champion of the world. And that's what I learned. What does it take to be the best at anything you choose to do? That's 110%.
Welcome, friends, to Intersections, where inner mastery meets outer impact, where our quest is to explore the highest in human potential by dissolving boundaries between the spiritual and the material, between the inner and the outer, between East and West and beyond. Today, we have in our midst Leah Goldstein, who is a tremendous force of nature, as you will discover, an internationally known ultra-endurance athlete and professional cyclist. She is the first female in the 40-year history of RAM, Race Across America, to win first place overall in the solo division. This is one of the toughest endurance events in the world. And early in her life, as a teenager, she has been a champion nationally and internationally in taekwondo and kickboxing. She's also served in the Israeli military, where she has trained elite commandos and perfected the art of pushing past physical boundaries. She fought her way into a very male-oriented special ops police course and eventually into Israel's undercover police unit, where she was combating terrorists and violent crimes. She has written her autobiography, No Limits. She is the speaker and co-founder of No Finish Line Living, where she provides customizable keynotes and retreats dedicated to moving others into a healthy and purposeful life. So there is much that we have to uncover with Leah. And so let me invite her into our midst. Leah, warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
What a life, and it's still unfolding in all its rich ways. I have to make a confession to you. Pretty early in my life, I hadn't yet decided what I want to be when I grow up. But for some reason, I decided that one of the careers I was not going to pursue was the military. And
Right.
then sports, I was passionate about cricket, which is a big sport in India.
Yeah.
But I really struggled with developing any real competence, in it. And so here you are, I'm speaking to somebody who has done such incredible things in the service of, defense and being in the military, and also who has pursued such incredible excellence in a domain of life that I can only admire from a healthy distance. So I'm in awe, of you and of this moment. I thought maybe we could start by inviting you to reflect a little bit on your roots. And I wonder if, as you look back at your childhood, there might be certain defining moments or people in your life, parents and beyond, who you could point to and say, you know what, that really was a major influence in my life. I woke up to new potentialities or possibilities or an understanding of me because I went through that experience.
I think, my background actually is very important, and my biggest influences are obviously my parents. Like my mother was born in northern China and my father in the Soviet Union. They met in Israel. When my father was a sailor, he docked in Vancouver, Canada, and he just saw opportunity there. They were both very young, under 20. So they immigrated. My sister was 3. I was made in Israel, born in Canada, so I was in the oven. And my dad came here with $100. Right? No English at all. And he was just determined to have a better life for his family, And so growing up and seeing how hard my parents worked, like my mom worked the night shift as a nurse, my dad during the day, and how we got work was just going to different companies in Vancouver and says work. That was the only English he knew. I need work, right? And kind of watching that and how my parents struggled. I mean, at one point, they had succeeded, bought 3 houses, and we lived in a big house. And all of a sudden, my dad lost everything, going back to rock bottom and then building back up again. And just seeing my parents of never giving up, no matter what, no matter what happens in life, you don't give up, because quitting is never an option, based in the world that I lived in. So when you're raised with that kind of mentality and that kind of leadership from my parents, creates a strong individual. And my father also, he never coddled my sister and I, like when we were in trouble or, in a difficult situation. He says you got to figure things out for yourself. You can't always run to people when things go south, right? Because if you get used to that, one day you're going to run and there's nobody there to help you out. So, just being independent in that regard started at a very young age. That's kind of where my strong foundations, stem from.
Yeah, wow. That's quite a lesson there for us about how to parent, really, in some of the ways in which your father and mother raised you, and how in a time when we are at times, feeling very protective about ourselves and others, and mental health, for example, is one reason for that. Like people are just feeling the need to just caution the world that, don't expose me to this or to that, because that can trigger me. You're actually saying that you feel that there was a certain amount of strength you gained from having your parents just be comfortable and saying, listen, face the world, face the imperfections of the world, and learn to strengthen yourself from within.
Exactly. Like learning at a young age, what does it feel like to fail, right? That doesn't mean it's the end. You have to learn that, failure is part of success. If you don't have the ability to fail, then, succeeding will be very difficult. Because a lot of times with people who have succeeded, you only hear the good story. You don't really hear the backstory of what, the struggle they went through and, how many times they were rejected and whatnot, right? So I learned that at a very young age, right? I mean, obviously with me, if when people know my stories, I was bullied at a very young age because I didn't know English very well. I spoke with a lisp. Learning was difficult for me. I had a little bit of a learning disability, put in a special class. And on the physical side, my left leg was growing at a faster rate than my right leg. It's longer, it's stronger, the foot is bigger. So doctors told my parents that I'd never excel, in sports or anything in athleticism, which was confusing for me as a child because it was the only subject that I got an A in. So, when you're different, kids can be cruel. So I was bullied. And every lunch hour, I was chased by a group of 8 boys, called the Jason gang. And I couldn't tell my parents because, again, my father implemented to me and to my sister, you have to be strong, independent, figure it out. And also back then, teachers said, you don't want to tattletale. So at that age, I had to learn at 7 years old, how am I going to get out of this, right? And, of course, I saw Bruce Lee on television, and that was kind of my solution.
The Bruce Lee moment. Yeah, that is beautiful. I have such fond memories of him as well, from Enter the Dragon and all of that, right? Like he was quite a figure. He was quite a figure. And I was so happy to hear about how much he has positively influenced you at that age. So, but in those moments, Leah, when these things are happening, there is at times a prevailing sort of mindset, right? And on people that these things should beat you up, or that, well, if that's what the expert says about, your lack of capacity to pursue, athleticism, well, then that's bad news for you and all that. Where did you develop this capacity in yourself from, where you could pull away from those kinds of limiting mindsets and beliefs that may be percolating around you, and choose for yourself, right? A destiny and a set of actions, operate out of the box, choose to create the intention for yourself that even if I'm being put in a special education class, that there's no reason why I can't, with, effort, toil, or etc., overcome whatever it is that the world is telling me are my liabilities.
Well, I mean, for me, we'll go back to the martial arts, and it wasn't like the physical part that helped me and really gave me the confidence. It was the mental strength. It's kind of like, when you go into a dog park and you see this big dog with its tail between its leg and this little chihuahua comes and barking at him, right? It's that confidence, right? So because I wasn't afraid anymore, there's something about, the self-defense that gave me that strength, kind of to stand up for myself. And then I felt really powerful because I never had to get into a fight, because it wasn't the physical part, it was the mental part that was lacking, right? And then I realized a lot of times, we want validations from others when we're seeking things to kind of to boost us or to lift our spirits, but really it comes from you, right? And then I realized that mental strength is much more powerful than physical strength in anything, in any genre, not just in sport, but in arts, music, entertainment, whatever it may be. Is going in there and believing yourself, and your biggest support system is you, and believing that you can do anything once you set your mind to it. And I kind of lived my life throughout the different careers that I've done with that kind of mentality.
There is such a, I think, testimony in your story about how to just break out of bounds, right? It's incredible. You entered, professional cycling at an age and stage which is typically a little bit on the later side. You then entered the ultra endurance kind of, sport, and then raced across America and won at a more mature age, for an athlete, right? I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? Like this ageism kind of aspect of needing to challenge what might be stereotypical notions of what people can achieve at a certain age?
Absolutely. I mean, I got shunned. Like when I left, it was called the Belush. It was a spying agency that because I mean, I knew what I wanted to do at a very young age. It was, to work at some form of security in Israel. But as the years progressed and I got into my 30s, I realized that wasn't my passion. I was an athlete and I wanted to pursue a cycling career because I thought I was good enough. So when a situation happened, there was a security situation that happened that allowed me to leave the country. And I came back to North America around 31, 30. And I just dove into the sport, and the federation basically said, you're too old. You basically missed the boat. They said I was too big for climbing, too small for sprinting, that this career would never happen for you. And, it was a struggle. I have to admit that, I didn't realize, in Israel, I was a big fish in a very small pond. And I come to North America and I'm a shrimp in an ocean. But I mean, I proved in the sport of pro racing, which took me 8 years to excel, that, you don't need a special gift in anything you choose to do. It doesn't matter what you do, because there's a gift all of us have, and it's called the gift of work. Right. And, I basically took that gift I had, and I knew that I had to work twice as hard as my competitors if I wanted to pursue this career. And everything started upstairs. Right. Because, as I was struggling, my teammates were saying, maybe you should, think about just riding as an age group, before you end up homeless, kind of trying to pursue this thing that people saw it only as a dream for me. Right. But, at 38 years old, I said, no, this is what I want. And so I kind of shifted my, what was going on upstairs, saying, I'm going to become this climber. I'm going to become this great cyclist. And that's exactly what happened that following year. And it was just a matter of switching what was going on upstairs and working, as I said, twice as hard than what I was previous. Because sometimes we think we're working hard enough, but we're not, right? And for me, it was 110%. It was lasering in, putting everything else on a shelf and doing what my passion was if I wanted to pursue this as a career.
There's an earlier juncture where you also give us a little bit of a glimpse into what discipline and hard work means to you. And this is when you're in school, you're being bullied, you see the Bruce Lee thing, and then you get invested in wanting to do something more kind of, help affirm and assert, your physical, strength and prowess, right? Can you talk about that moment where the coach sort of like gives you a little bit of a formula for what it is that, he's expecting you to take on, if you so choose to, or if you don't, then you can walk away.
Right. Well, I mean, when I got into the Taekwondo, when I saw the Bruce Lee when I was young, right, I excelled very fast, right? By the time I was 12 years old, I was a junior national champion. And part of the reason why is because my father was a champion in the sport of boxing. So when he saw my interest in Taekwondo, he started to teach me boxing. So you mix Taekwondo and boxing, get more of a kickboxer. So at that time, and also at that time, boys and girls fight together, right? And so I kind of, had this little bit of a big head. So when I went, in a kickboxing series, I went to look for something that was more challenging for me. And that's where Alan Chang, he saw a very talented kid, little kid with too much confidence, a little bit on the cocky side. He wanted to teach me a lesson, right? So at that point, he puts me into a boxing ring. He brings in this kid half my size, and I'm thinking, I'm going to kill him, right? But I didn't know he was his most skilled kickboxer. And then, make a long story short, he basically beats me up a little bit, right? So he sends me home, and he goes, you think about it. Think about it, right? And then I'm totally deflated. And so what he was trying to say is, whenever you're at the top of your game and no matter what you're doing, all that means is you're working twice as hard to stay there. It's never, ever overestimate yourself or underestimate anyone, because everybody is beatable. And then he says to me, he sat me down. Remember, I'm like barely 12 years old. He says, you want to do this sport? Then he gives me these conditions: no smoking, no drinking, no drugs, no friends, no swear, train 7 days a week, train twice a day. And by following those principles, he said, by 17 years old, you world champion, right? And I learned at that age, what does it take to be the best at anything you choose to do? And that's 110%, right? And as for me, as a 13, I didn't do the parties or whatever friends or whatever most teenagers do. I did correspondence, and I didn't train 7 days a week, twice a day. I trained 7 days a week, 3 times a day. But by following that principle, lasering in and focus 110%, I was a provincial champion, 2-time national champion, North American champion. And as Alan Chen predicted, at the age of 17 years old, I was undefeated champion of the world. And that's what I learned. What does it take to be the best at anything you choose to do? That's 110%.
There is today a lot of sort of focus on habits. How do we sort of acquire good habits? How do we pursue excellence in any domain? There's a lot of psychological literature that's starting to come out on it. And I think people are questing, people are aspiring. There is a growing awareness that our brain is plastic, and that with the right diligence and effort, that we can actually, choose to sculpt it in new ways. And you are a living, again, just testament to that. But I also know how for most people it's really hard to give up their current lifestyle and to not fall for a certain, instant gratification urge or something. So in your case, this kind of laser sharp focused discipline, is it something that you feel has come quite naturally to you? Or are there any practices that you might perhaps share, the spirit of sort of helping inspire and guide others who may struggle at times between kind of the person they want to be and the comfort zone that they're living in today?
Well, I think that's the issue is people are afraid to come out of their comfort zone, right? Because they don't know what the unknown is. And I think, again, we talk about failure, right? I'm saying not prepare for it, but, not, don't expect it, but prepare for it, right? Like when I go into something, I know it's going to be a hard struggle. And I know there may be some downfalls, and I know, I might, hit rock bottom at times, but the strength comes when you're able to come out of that. And that's what builds character, and that's what makes you a strong individual. It's not the easy road up, because to succeed in anything, there is no easy road. You tell me one person who had it easy doing anything that they pursued. It doesn't exist, right? And I think for me is going through those experiences at a young age and learning what does it feel like to fail, but work really hard and then succeed. Like, for example, if I wanted to do something or go somewhere, my dad just didn't give me like $5 or $10, which is like $100 for a little kid. I had to go and work. So I delivered newspapers or flyers or whatever. And when I remember getting my first check and feeling, wow, I did this on my own without the help of anyone else, right? It gives you that strength of independence, right? And then that just starts building as you go in through life, right? As again, we talk about coddling people or always, patting people on the back. We talk about sometimes tough love is the best thing you can do, even for an adult, right? Sometimes we need a little slap in the face saying life isn't always easy and it's going to be difficult, right? But be prepared for it. But that's what makes people strong. That's what gives you the strength, I think, is those failures in those hard times. It's not the good times. The good times is just the bonus at the end.
Yeah. My spiritual teacher, Yogananda, he says, a smooth life is not a victorious life. And I see that so much in the way you live your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if it's smooth uphill, it's going to be smooth downhill as well, right?
Yeah. You speak in your book, about how you say physical, mental, and spiritual. That's the the mix that you really emphasize, right? And I'm just curious that when you talk about this notion of a worthwhile life, requiring movement, both physically, mentally, and spiritually, to exercise, to challenge, and to change. You've emphasized in our conversation so far the power of mind over matter, so to say, that, what you have been able to achieve physically has really been based on what was there upstairs, in the mind.
Right.
What is your relationship with spirituality?
Well, it kind of evolved a little bit. In the beginning, when I was younger, I was quite actually religious, but I think it kind of changed, right? I think religion for me, way back when, it was based on what other people's beliefs are and them trying to push things onto me, right? And I realized that we know what's good, what feels good to you, right? What makes you feel happy by helping others. And, you don't need that coming from anyone else, right? You don't have to validate whatever, I'm religious and I'm good because I go to a synagogue or I go to a church, I go to a mosque or whatever. We know what it takes to be a good person, right? And that, and I started to learn that as I was, started to grow up, I lived in the most religious country in the world. And all I saw is a lot of violence and, when dealing with religion and stuff like that, I go, this is not what it's about, right? So, I don't really, advertise, my spirituality or whatever. I just know that what feels good when I do good things, when I help others. I love being in nature. People don't know that I love being by myself, right? And just away from all the chaos and everything else, right? Because we all have that seed in us and we know what's good and what's not good. We don't need anyone else telling us, right? And I think living that, what's in your heart is the most important, right? And everything else doesn't matter. Because as I said, religion is in all of us and the spirituality is in all of us. It's a matter of, how we want to use it for strength and by helping others, right? And I think too, it just comes within. It's a very personal thing. And I think it means different things to different people.
Yeah. No, I like that very much. I think if I were to unpack that, what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're saying it's a very personal journey. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be mediated by any institution or any formal religion. It could for some people, but it may not be for others.
Right.
And that there are certain practices, like in your case, solitude, maybe
Mhm.
making some time for yourself, and then in nature, being in nature, which tend to activate a little bit more of that subtler inkling or voice, from within. I'm hearing that from you.
Absolutely, yes. It grounds you for sure. Like, I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
huge, people know me, I'm a huge animal lover. I have two dogs. And the best part of my day is when I wake up in the morning, and I live in Vernon, so it's very beautiful, mountainous here. When we go into the trails, there's nobody there. We might run into a bear or whatever. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's like, it's just this Kickstarter of the day, and
Yeah.
for me, it's the most important part. And it's what I love and what I'll always do till the day I die. Right.
So beautiful. It grounds you, isn't it? Like when you're able to make
Absolutely.
that little
Yeah.
bit of time for yourself at the
Yeah.
very beginning of the day. And dogs are a very special animal. I mean, I've just been, just observing them in the last several years in the following sense that when you think about most species, right? Like
Yeah.
they tend to want to hang out with more of their own species. They might like enjoy a little bit some other species for a
Right.
bit of time, but they kind of want to hang out with their own kind.
Yeah.
Dogs are very unique that way. They'll go and
Yeah.
play with another dog for like 2 minutes, but then they want
Yeah.
to go back to their master. They're
Yeah.
just,
Exactly. Yeah.
for some reason, they finish it. And it's such an unconditional love. They just have such an unconditional
Absolutely.
love. This
Yeah.
person could be a messy person, could be a
Yeah.
caring person or an
Yeah.
uncaring person, whatever. They just have this unconditional love. And
Yeah.
their affinity with human beings is amazing.
Absolutely. And also their instinct too, when you're not feeling well or you're not happy or excited about something or anxiety about, about an issue that happened. They're just so intuitive with you, and then,
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, with any animal, really. I mean, I'm just saying, I think
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
be whatever in a
Yeah.
sanctuary if I didn't do what I'm doing. Right. But yeah, I mean, I've always had dogs. I can't imagine my life without an animal for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I'm so happy to hear that. I have the same affection for animals, and I've actually had it all through my life. And one of the high points for me in that experience came when I and my family had a chance to go to Botswana, which we've then done
Oh, okay.
twice. And of course, that took our kind of just exposure to the wildlife and animals to a whole different level. So yeah, so beautiful, so beautiful. Coming back to the spirituality side, then I think I want to just kind of invite you to help unpack a little bit your inner life, not in a way that in any way invades a very sacred and private space for you, but in a way that informs and guides the way you pursue success in life, which is you talk about mind over matter. Sometimes for me it's helpful to really have a very fluid sense of my identity, where sometimes I see myself in the physical space, and I have to take very practical stock of my strengths and weaknesses, or what my current situation is in terms of health or what have you, stamina, what have you. Sometimes in the mental space, which is all these mindsets and beliefs and convictions that I may have. But then sometimes just purely as this notion of, and I want to test this idea with you, of just like pure spirit, a timeless, changeless, pure, constantly renewing, unconditionally peaceful part of who I am. I don't know. Is that a relationship that speaks to you, or is that too abstract?
I mean, I think for me, I'm just a very simple person, to be honest with you, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't dive deep into anything. I kind of stay on the surface. I'm careful with what I say. You know what I mean? Sometimes it comes across as maybe too harsh or misunderstood or whatnot. People know me that I'm a very independent individual, kind of not super social, butterfly or whatnot, right? But I think for me too is just learning to love life. And not to dwell on the past. When I talk to a lot of high risk youth, I said, your future doesn't dictate your path. And I think we hang on to a lot of bad things that happen to us, and we live our life by it like that. Like you have to use it as strength, not as, direction when we've had hardships in our life. And I think that's a lot of downfall for a lot of people, a lot of young people in particular, right?
Yeah.
Is that, we are here. This is a one-time deal, man. We don't get second chances, and you have to make every day count, and you have to love your day. You have to love yourself. You have to love life. And if you're not, and if you're waking up with always, bickering and negative or whatever, which comes a lot, I hear it a lot, it's not going to help you, and it's not going to fulfill your soul. It's not going to fulfill your life. And I think at some point we have to, park things and just remember why we're here and appreciate it, and just, big thing is volunteering, helping others. Like I just discovered that, like why I speak, I don't feel comfortable, standing in front of thousands or hundreds of people. But for me, what it was the feedback after, people coming up and saying, you know what, there was something you said that I just needed to hear. Right.
Yeah.
And being responsible for helping others in a positive way was a feeling I had never experienced doing anything else for myself. Right. And that's the reasons why I do this, and so when you're going to that direction, when I say, trying new things that make you feel uncomfortable, we should, because you never know where it's going to take you. So I think that's the biggest kind of message that I want to say is don't hold on to those negative things, right? They will haunt you till the day you die. You got to park that, use it as strength and learn it or take it to help others. And the fulfillment will be, it's undescribable how you'll feel when you reach that kind of direction of the positivity opposed to the negativity in life. Because we've all gone through difficult times. We all have. You're not the only one, right? And so just reflecting on, who you are, what you're doing, and where do you want to end up, because, my grandmother said to me, the biggest impact when she was sitting on her deathbed, she said, you never want to say the words, I wish or what if. And that stuck to me really strong, is doing the things that you love and not letting anything get in your way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you have achieved so much in just a short space of a few decades. And right here in the way we are talking today, I see one of the secrets to that, which is that you don't waste any time. You honor the gift of every second and moment that comes to you, and part of it is not wallowing, like you said, in anything in the past which is not going to help inform or inspire you, to create a better future for yourself and others. And that's so beautiful, that capacity and the discipline with a laser sharp mind not to waste any moment of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, listen, like I said, it's, this is it for us. This is our life, right? You can't sit there and wait for things to happen, because you're going to be sitting there for a very long time. You got to take that step and make things happen for yourself. Right. And that, that takes courage. But once you get into that pattern, you go, wow, this is what life is all about. And it'll be so much more fulfilling than just sitting there and watch the time goes by, And I hate that too, when we use age as an excuse, right? You don't sit there and wait to die, right? You live every moment like it's your last day. And it's so much more fulfilling, like doing things for yourself than watching other people do great things. You do great things, right? Because there's so many things that we can do that we don't, because we're so afraid. And age is a big part of it. It doesn't mean it's a stupid number that means nothing. Honestly, I stopped counting how old I was when I got kind of into my mid 30s. People would ask me, and I just throw out a number. I don't know, I'm 33, 35, 36. I don't care. You know what I mean? Even now, in 1969, that's when I was born. Whatever age that is, that's good. Because I don't dwell on it. It doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't.
I love it. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. So this is the book that Leah has written, No Limits. At the beginning of the very first chapter, Oceanside, California, you talk about how you say, there's the quote that you're sharing. One day your life will flash before your eyes. Make sure it's worth watching. And I think I'm hearing you speak so much about how, look, it's really important for each of us to make sure it's worth watching, right? That the way we live our life is that, right? Yes. How beautiful. This part that you picked up, one day your life will flash before your eyes. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there is this research on near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. And I've had one of the preeminent scientists who have studied that field, who came to the show, Dr. Bruce Grayson. I thought you might find this, quite affirming. So one of the things they found is that for people who have had a brush with death, but also who have gone into some kind of a unconscious state during that period, and then they've been brought back. Some of these people have very clear memories of what they experienced all the way through. They actually, for their own vantage point, never lost consciousness, although from the physician standpoint of view, they've lost consciousness. And I know, Leah, you've gone through a couple of brushes like that in your own case. We want to come back and maybe talk about that. And so maybe this, is close to your experience or not. But what they found is that for many of these people, they have very common themes in what they report back later when they're fully alive again as to what that experience was like. And one of those themes is that they talk about the life review. And the life review is that they say that my whole life flashed in front of me. And not just the past that I actually consciously remember, even the things, the small little details that I may have consciously forgotten over the years, going back all the way, they actually flash in front of me as if it's like a movie of my life. without judgment, but it was like playing in front of me. And it's a little bit of a time illusion because they may have been unconscious, let's say only for 30 minutes, but they actually feel like they experienced their whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So quite literal to what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've heard the same kind of, recollections of many people who've gone through that same kind of experience, right? Like I said, I mean, I don't know if I've whatever. I mean, at one point in 2005, I think I've had the mother of all crashes when I was in a race and I landed on my face at like 85 kilometers an hour, which basically it ripped up, the bottom part of my face. My arm was broken, dislocated back there from the friction of the fall, my first layer of skin. I mean, most of my bones were broken. And as I was lying there, this was in Oregon, I didn't think I was going to make it. I thought, this is it. This was it for me. And I remember kind of whole pieces of my face. And but obviously, I woke up in a hospital and in the trauma unit, and I was very lucky. And then I realized then is how, precious life really is. And it changed me at that point is the importance of living that life, that at the end you can say, what, I did have a good life and I did great things and I am content, right, when that time comes. And I think it's very important. And going through those traumatic experiences, you realize how precious life really is.
This is making me a little bit sort of heavy-hearted. We have just over the last week lost a very, very dear person in our humans. I don't know if you knew Hillary Nelson, an ace mountaineer, one of the preeminent, women mountaineers, and she went to Nepal recently with a partner. And basically,
I heard about that. Yes.
Yeah. We had her on the show about a year and a half ago, and I was going back and revisiting that conversation I had with her. Beautiful soul, really questing, just like you for so much in so many beautiful ways. And, what you were just sharing here is almost exactly, her words in that podcast where she talks about how, she lost, a dear friend and, who passed away unexpectedly. And through that, one of the key things she learned was like, death is kind of like just out there, it's just out there and can come to you anytime, anywhere. And so you might as well just like accept that and now live life to its fullest.
Absolutely. Yes. I 100% agree with that comment in that statement. Yes. It's how I live my life, because life is precious, right? We don't realize how precious it is, right? And especially, for us individuals who have a healthy, normal life, that we are extra, and live in a great country that gives us the freedom to do the things that we want to do. I think a lot of times we don't realize how lucky we are compared to other people. And I think sometimes, as again, hearing other people's story and what they've gone through, it'll ground you saying, holy crap, I am lucky. I do have a good life. And there's so many things that I can do. It's a choice, right? You know what I mean? Especially in the position that we're all here, North America in particular, and most of us in the world, of what you want to do. And you can't blame anybody else but yourself, right? And we're really good at blaming everything else or those past experiences that have happened to us, right? As I said, you're not the only one on that boat, right? It's a matter of your choice and how you want to live your life. And if you choose to do nothing, then zip it. Nobody wants to hear about it, right? You know what I mean? They want to hear about the good things and the struggles, and that'll make you a superstar. No matter how many times you've hit rock bottom, you coming out of it makes anybody a superstar.
So powerful. I mean, I think what I'm hearing from you in some ways is an invitation to us to challenge some of the just formulaic ways in which we have been told, like, we can pursue happiness. The formula is, try to aspire for the good life, wake up, have a, good, tasteful meal, go out and do stimulating work, come back, relax, chill out with your friends, go party, have a great dinner, come back and go to sleep, and then wake up in the morning, do the same thing again and again and again and again and again and again, and try to do it for as long as you can.
Exactly.
That's a good life. And you're saying, well, wait a second, like, did you actually live in that life the way?
Right, exactly. Or you're just dwelling on the things, you focus on the bad things, right? What about all the great things that are way overpowering, right? Why don't we focus on that rather than every time you meet somebody, oh, this is what I went through and whatever, But what about this is what I went through, but look at me now. Look what I'm doing after going through all that, whatever. Why don't we go on that direction opposed to just sitting down here, right? Because it'll always bring you down. That saying that one bad apple makes the whole room shut down, right? You know what I mean? But I mean, that's all it takes. Nobody wants to hang around that one person, right? But it's a matter, like I said, it's a choice. You can change anything, right? And for you, it's your mentality. Like, you think about it. If you had to meet somebody with that same kind of attitude, It's not what you want, right? You want to do great things and be positive and say great things that's uplifting, not something that's going to just bury you down. And that's the thing. Once you try that, like, again, people are dwelling, like, do a list of all the bad things in your life, then do the things and all the good things in your life. And I can promise you it'll outweigh anything, right? And that's the focus. It has to be on the positive, because that's the only way it's going to change. It's what's going on upstairs. No one's going to help you do it. It's a matter of coming from within. It's you're going to do it, right? So sometimes, when they call that I'm this, motivational speaker or whatever, right? It's not a matter of me motivating. It's you hearing the words coming out of my mouth. It's not coming from me, right? Like when I go into a room and I can motivate you for that moment, I don't care about that moment. I want that moment to last a year down the road. I want that motivation to exist, not just, after you hear me for whatever, an hour, right? And that's the focus, is how you're doing a year from now. Can you keep that rolling? And that's the struggle. And that's the importance for me when I do presentations. I want to see, what did you do with what you've learned from the things that I've said? How has that changed your life in a positive way? Not just for a week or a month, but a year, years.
So this is where our paths start to converge. I'm so inspired to hear that, because, in my role as a teacher and a trainer, I mean, similar to you, I'm very drawn to the idea of helping people advance to their, to their ideal self, to their best self. And, there are two lessons that you've talked about here, which really echo things I've, I guess, stumbled into as well. The first is that you don't do anything as a teacher. It's basically they who get sparked from within, and it's the audience that gets to recognize and see what truths they want to see in your message. And often they'll be the ones who will inspire you then with the path that they take on. And then the other is, I remember the one time when, I was blessed to be able to get like good ratings, for my class, and students were loving it and all of that. And then I remember having this flash sometimes in me that, Hitendra, this is kind of like a Broadway show. You're going in there. There's a little bit of upliftment and surge and excitement, whatever, joy. But 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, was there any like lasting positive change, that was brought forth by this? And if so, great. If not, then this is a Broadway show. But I want to be a teacher. I want to be an elevator of like, humanity in a way which is more sustainable, right? And so I'd love, thoughts and ideas you may have for those of us who are striving to be, really good coaches, at work, with our teams, or parents at home with our kids, or trainers or inspirational speakers or what have you, right? And any or all of us are put into that place from time to time where we want to help support other people's growth. What have you found in that, work, which I'm guessing is an increasing part, of your career? Is that right? Like, are you doing more and more of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think the biggest uplifting as any coach leader, as you know, is when you get feedback. I mean, like just yesterday, I got a text message from a good friend of mine who, she's struggling with her godson, who's 21 years old, and he's just, doesn't know his direction, whatnot. And then she just said, read the book. So she gave him my autobiography, my book. And she said it's completely transformed him, right? Which is, it's huge, that's just the most uplifting thing. Like I said, it's the greatest feeling than winning any race or setting records or whatnot, right? Again, is when you're helping others, right? And I think that's what strives us as leaders and coaches and speakers and whatnot, is seeing what it does to people, right? How it changes lives, right? And that's the biggest motivator. And again, that's what keeps me going, right? Again, I still don't feel comfortable, standing on those stages with all these people and stuff. But again, it's the feedback that makes it worth it, right? And it's something that I had never felt doing anything else, and it's worth it. For my uncomfortableness, whatever, for an hour is worth, helping possibly even 1, 2, 10, 100 people. It's well worth it.
Beautiful. What I see there is a little bit of this closing of the loop that is happening, where in the early part of your story, you talked about these 6 or 7 bullies and how they were really the one who were holding all the energy. And, you were the one who was getting victimized and beaten up a little bit. And then you take the energy, and you activate it within. And a lot of your life has been about this personal quest, for excellence and for overcoming, challenges and what have you. And now it's as if like, you are taking a fresh look at the environment, at the world around you, and you're activating that energy in everybody. It's like a multiplier that is happening, going from just beyond you into celebrating that like activation of the inner Leah in everybody.
Well, I would hope so, right? I mean, that's the goal. It would be such a better world if we were all way more positive and loving and caring to each other than aggression and this road rage and violence. And I don't know, it just feels like we've been becoming so closed up and not, just caring about ourselves, right? Like really stupid examples, when COVID hit, everybody's going after the toilet paper and whatever, or hogging things for themselves. What about your neighbor, the lady who can't, she's in a wheelchair, or the man who's, whatever, he doesn't have transportation. But we're so consumed with caring for ourselves and not our neighbors, right? And I think that's got to change, right? And like, I'm going to be honest, like 30 years ago, 20 years, that wasn't important to me, but it is to me now, because I realize how it's so much more harmonized, right? How we are when we do care for others. And there isn't this chaos, and this is caring, and this is anxiety and aggression, right? And I think that's how we have to be, in perspective too, is, care for yourself for sure, love yourself, but care for your neighbors as well. You know what I mean? Because it does make a difference. It does. And I'm not trying to preach or whatever, or push things. I'm just saying, just try it and see what it feels like. Like, don't take it from me. Just try it once and you'll see the feeling and how it changes you. It changes your life and it changes everything. It just makes it more harmonized, right? When we live in that kind of environment, and it's upon you to start it in your circle.
Mm-hmm. You're reminding me, it's a very moving thing that you're talking about, of a story that Mother Teresa would share. She said that one time she heard some news about how there was a very, very poor family in the community who had been going hungry, lack of food, for a couple of days. And so she cooked some rice and rushed over, to their place, 10, 15 minutes walk away. And she said she goes in, and there's this Hindu family, and she gives them this rice, which they're delighted to have. And the mother in that home, she takes half the rice and disappears, and then comes back, a few minutes later, and then shares the rest of the rice, the half, with the family. And then she inquires and asks what she did with the other half. Did she store it for, them to eat later? Actually, turns out that she said that there was a Muslim family who was their neighbor, who was equally hungry and who also hadn't gotten food, that Mother Teresa hadn't known about. And so she'd gone and just taken half the rice to them. And then Mother Teresa says, I had this impulse in that moment to quickly go and get more rice, for both families.
Yeah.
And she said, but then I decided that instead of doing it that time, I would do it in the morning, because I wanted to allow this lady to continue to feel that joy of giving.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's
So,
true. It's amazing, right? Again, like a lot of times these conversations is not really listened to, right? Because people, whatever, everyone can take care of themselves or whatnot, right? Well, one day you could be in that situation and you'll appreciate that one person, right? And if anything ever happens to you, you won't be forgotten, right? So you never know where your life is going to lead you. You may need that person or that family that is hungry to help you out. So it's all karma, and I believe in it. I really do.
Yeah, I want to come back and talk more about this chapter of your life. It seems like it's a powerful, just kind of evolution and growth that continues to happen, in your journey. Before we get there, let's, that must have been such an epic moment where you had that accident, when as part of the bicycle race, there were about 14, 15 of you that came crashing, on the highway, and you were, I guess, as I understand, the one that was below all of them. Can you maybe just give our audience just a glimpse of what that moment must have felt like? And then how is it that you cultivated and practiced the grit that it took to rebuild yourself literally from ground up?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, it was, based in Velo News, which is one of the biggest cycling magazines in the world, it was one of the worst crashes in the history of the sport, of course, minus people who have passed away. That the magnitude of that accident, the diagnosis was, it was questionable about my ability to walk properly without a walker or a cane, but it was unquestionable that I'd never race again. And that's what I was left with. Honestly, I had hit rock bottom at that point in my life, and people say, how did you get out of it? But because it was also one of the worst pains I'd ever gone through. Everything hurt all the time, breathing, blinking, too much light, too much sound. I was bedbound, right? But again, when you hit rock bottom, if you don't mentally get out of there, you will always stay there, and I basically made a promise to myself that, I don't care how long it's going to take and the kind of pain I go through. I'm going to get back on that bike and I'm going to race again and come back even stronger than I did before all this craziness happened. And the point is, when we're faced with this overwhelming situation, we buckle, we freeze, we don't know what to do. So we do nothing. But the point is, you have to start somewhere, even if it seems like it's nowhere. And at that point, the only thing I could do was contract my abs. But every day I did something today that I couldn't do the day before. And being in that positive mode, I could feel things starting to bind. As crazy as that may sound, I could just feel things happening in my body. Because I said to myself, I am going to get back on that bike, and nothing was going to stop me. I didn't care what I heard, even from the professionals or doctors, nurses, whatever. Even psychologists came because they thought, oh, she can go into a depression or whatnot. No, siree, man. I was on a one-track mind that I was going to get back on that bike, and I did. I mean, within, I'm going to say 8 months, I was already training on the road, right? And that was just pure determination coming from upstairs and believing in myself and not letting this negative thought, whatever, tearing me down. Because to me, quitting is never an option. It's never an option.
That is a bolt from the blue. It is just such an incredible story. Both of like what you may have experienced in that moment, what you may have experienced then in the days and weeks, ahead, with all that pain that you mentioned, you felt in every part of your body, and then how you literally willed yourself into not just recovery, but ultimately to a place of real thriving. I mean, it's a testament to the capacity of the human body to just biologically be this like magical thing that can actually self-heal given the right patience and determination. And
yeah, I mean, if I believed everything the doctors have told me, or if I absorbed every time somebody said I couldn't do something, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today, right? I mean, if I got a penny for every time somebody said I couldn't do something, I think I'd be a billionaire, right? So I mean, that's a force for me. Like, I'm going to show you exactly, what I can't do when they say that, and for me, it was my mental ability. It was, again, is just being in that positive mode is what allowed me to heal. I mean, don't kid yourself. I had my low moments for sure. It was kind of like a roller coaster ride. But when you dip, you use that momentum and you get back up. That's just how you have to roll it, right? Just don't stay down there. Because again, with any genre that happened in your lifetime, no matter what the situation is, if you're going to stay that rock bottom, you're going to always use that as an excuse for anything else you do in your life. You know what I mean? I mean, I could use that. Okay, I can't do this because in 2005, I had such a crash and doctors told me that I wouldn't do A, B, or C. And you just hold on to that, right? Because that's like your rock, that's your excuse, right? Screw that. I'm going to determine what I can and can't do. It's going to come from me, not what's coming from you. And that's what I mean. When we want validation from others, it doesn't matter what other people think, only take in the good things, right? And that's it. It's up to you to do the things that you love, to heal, to whatever it may be. But a lot of times we want that coddling. We talk about the coddling coming from others. You don't need that kind of support system. Again, your biggest support system is you. It's your ability to do the things that you love. It all comes within. It doesn't come from anyone else, right? And so that's kind of the genre, again, that's of how I live my life, is that it is our choice to do the things that we want. And if you don't do the things that you love, whatever, there's no one to blame but yourself. And when you succeed in the things that you do, no one to blame but yourself, right? And so, you kind of stay in that mode and you'll be surprised how things will change when you're the one to blame, right? You have no one else to blame but yourself.
Yeah. It's almost that that accident happened in part to have you prove to yourself how much more, powerful you are over the circumstances of your life. But then through the storytelling that you're now engaging in, it's actually as if through that accident that you had to go through, Leah, I mean, all of us are getting, proof points, and all of us are getting inspiration and guidance without having to, hopefully go through anything close to that in our own lives. So there's a multiplicative impact of the value of that pain you went through, for the world. So thank you for bringing that gift to us. Yeah. Are you familiar with this poem, Invictus?
The Invictus, the sport,
yeah, the poem. Well, there's the movie, made on Nelson Mandela and a particular moment in his life called Invictus. And then there was a poem that used to inspire him, which is what the movie was based on.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is a poem by a poet called William Henley, who really struggled with a lot of ill health in his life. Mandela was very inspired by this poem. He used to have it with him in prison cell. And, I just am remembering the last 4 lines of this poem because it speaks so much to your nature, to who you are. And William Henley wrote, he said, "It matters not how straight the gate, gate meaning the entryway into whatever, enlightenment or something. It matters not how narrow. It matters now how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul."
Amen.
Yes. It's ringing in my mind as you speak. As you speak, these thoughts are coming to my mind. And I wanted to ask you, who's in a sense, like the William Henley for you? Like, so Mandela talked about how much this poem really helped him, during his dark times. And I'm curious, you speak with such force and conviction and inner direction. And it may be that really that is the most pivotal guide, coach, mentor for you, is just your own inner voice. It used to be your parents at an earlier age in your life. But in your adult life, like over time, have there been, I guess, individuals, living or dead, or other forces that you've turned to during some of your darkest, moments?
Believe it or not, it's my parents. I mean, they were always there for me, good times, bad times. They were equally happy when I didn't do good in races or anything I wanted to do to when I did great. They were my rock. They were so supportive at anything I chose to do, right? And so they're my heroes, and both my mom and dad. Like, I'm really close to my mom. Is my best friend. She always is, always will be, right? Just living and growing up with that kind of influence, right? And having that. I mean, I'm so lucky. I am so blessed to have such supportive parents to this day. I talk to them every day. And they're always supportive. My mother has never said no to me, right? Even when I was a kid, she wanted me to experience everything. Even when she knew that I was horrible at something, she goes, "You're going to be great," right? Just experience and see what it's like, and not kind of enclose me. But, and again, with my father, with the independence, at the times I disliked him as we're little kids. Oh, I hate my dad or whatever. But I'm so grateful with the way he raised, both my sister and I, because we are the way we are because of them. And I'm very fortunate to have them as my role models. They were when I was a little kid, when I was 10, and they are when I'm in my 50s. So I'm very lucky.
How nice. How beautiful. Well, can you just, like, when you talk to them next, just let them know how the world that you engage with now, is very thankful to them for all that they've done to make you who you are, because I do feel just welling up from within of just a great sense of gratitude, to them. I feel blessed to have had parents who have had a similar, very marked influence on my life. And therefore, to hear that from you and to see that as something that even till today, continues to be a force for you is like so heartwarming, so beautiful.
Yes, thank you. I will let them know for sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Leah, in the last few minutes, maybe we can talk then about the new chapter that is unfolding for you. I mean, there's so much that we could keep unpacking in your life. Right. And I've had to be very disciplined and selective in the forays that we made here today in the confines of time that we have, and what is such an encyclopedic journey that you've taken in life. And one of the things that's really special about it is the just reinvention that you keep going through, every decade or two with what you pursue next. And so with where you are today, where is your athletic career going? And it sounds like more and more you're getting invested in wanting to help support and serve the world, through your principles and ideas. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what's your big dream, over the next 10 years?
Well, I mean, my speaking career has kind of exploded a little bit, right? So I'm very fortunate enough to have the opportunity again to share my story with many genres, different, areas of life, different disciplines. Speaking with kids, high-risk youth, very heart-fulfilling for me, especially because that's where it stems, right? With those kids that have that didn't have fortunate, lifestyles as I did, or many of us did as children. So being there for them is very, very fulfilling for me. That I've been involved many years, and we're also working on a documentary that should be released in the next couple of months.
Oh, lovely!
So that's kind of the next project. And I think the biggest one for me, though, is Race Across America is not done. I mean, I have, I've won the whole thing, and I've done it 3 times, completed a very good results. For me, the goal is to kind of come close to the 10 days. And I still feel that I have the potential to do that. So that's kind of the next thing as an athlete, I'm going to try and do that in the next couple of years for sure. So if all goes well, that's kind of the goal for next year, is to go into Race Across America at my age and see what we can do.
Wow, God bless you. Keep going on that. It's incredible to hear. And so, what is your record so far? I know it's been 11 days?
No, actually 10 days, 18 hours, I believe, is the best I've done. So we want to cut out that 18 hours somehow. We'll see what happens, right? I believe in my heart that I can. I mean, I'm willing to do the work for it. But of course, with Race Across America, Mother Nature plays a huge role, right? If it's to, I mean, in the heat dome, or the race that I won, we had the heat dome where it was 50 Celsius or 120 Fahrenheit for Americans, throughout the whole race, almost like right across the country. So in conditions like that, it's very hard to ride hard, when you're racing and there's such extreme heat. But then again, in 2019, we hit rain, storms and whatnot, cold temperatures. So, it depends how the cards fold out for you, right? I mean, you have to have a little bit of luck, not only just, the great physical part. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We have a good set of cards, a good deck on our hand when we go after Race Cross America.
It's great. Wishing you well, both with the documentary and with this next quest to continue to advance, your physical accomplishments. What is your fondest memory in life?
My fondest memory in life? Oh my gosh, I have so many. I think this is going to sound kind of weird, but when I went into kickboxing, my father was not a fan. He didn't want his daughter looking like a boxer. So he didn't come to any of my fights or whatnot, whatever. But the biggest fight I had was against an American fighter. And he actually just came to my corner and was with my coach, kind of guiding me and telling me how to fight it. And it was just a very heartfelt moment because I was so obsessed with the sport and my father was so against it, right? And just having him stand in my corner, you know what I mean? Or be in my corner was something that he so did not want me to do, right? But he finally just cracked and said, okay, she loves it. She's good at it. Wow. And I'm going to show her that I'm going to be there. So that, for me, it was a moment that I probably will never forget.
Oh, that's so sweet. And you must have been what? 12, 13, 14? What age?
I was like 14 years old, barely. I was fighting a 28-year-old, whatever. She was like, 6'7". It was a totally mixed match. It was not a good, sometimes there's kind of crazy things that happen in that sport because they wanted to see a knockout or whatever. But yeah, so that was kind of those kind of memories of having that, because I've little struggles a lot with my father of the things that I wanted to do. Because, growing up in a Jewish household, you're expected to be a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist. You know what I mean? So the direction that I took wasn't that conventional in our, in our traditions, right? So, and I think he finally kind of was supportive of the things that I wanted to do. It was a big breaking point.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's such a powerful lesson in how sometimes there are these perhaps like small moments and small decisions and behaviors and choices that we don't realize, but it may be having a lifelong impact on somebody's life,
Absolutely.
Like what he did in that moment, perhaps for him, it was just whatever, impulsive, or he just moved to do it in that moment. And maybe he, I don't know, forgot about it a year later or something, but here you are still remembering it today. So
absolutely. Beautiful. Yeah. It's because my parents are both so important to me in my life. Right. And I want their validation. I want their support. It's important for me, right? So for me, that was like, the best thing in the world. And those little memories that happen like that, you don't forget them.
I would really love to have us conclude by having you, of all the work that you have done to bring principles and insights and inspiration to others from what you have lived and experienced in your own life, if you could offer like one wish, what is the one thing which you may invite and hope and aspire for all of us, that, hey, folks out there, from my life, like, here is one thing that if you could just take on, embrace, and make your own, I know beautiful things are going to happen.
Well, I think for me, what's important is that if you do have the ability to get back up every time you get punched, kicked, shoved, knocked down, you get back up and you keep moving forward, then your possibilities of achievement, success, happiness, if anything you want, are truly endless. And I think just remembering that is just living a life to the fullest, as you said earlier, and loving yourself and loving life. And don't dwell on the past or bad experiences. Those are used for strength. It's not the way you lead your life.
Yeah, so beautiful. So beautiful. On that note, as we bring this to closure, I want to share that on the one hand, I see a lot of, ferocity and discipline and, hard work and mental strength and all of these amazing qualities that you are celebrating, affirming, practicing, showing us what they can do. And at the same time, I feel a great sense of love arising from within you, expressing itself in everything that you've shared. A love for life, a love for making every moment matter, a love for this romance between like, who am I at my core? What's my like fullest potential? What is it that I can manifest in the world? And then ultimately love that is growing and growing and growing into wanting to help others as well, in their own quest to be the best versions of themselves, and honoring that spirit that lies, within each of them as well. That's what I see your life as, Leah, and it is really leaving me with the feeling of great upliftment, right in this moment. So thank you for all you do, and you're living so many really powerful truths, and inviting us to live them as well, for which I'm really grateful. Wishing you all the best, and every other quest that you take on from here, till that moment where finally, like all of us, life has to come to close. So thank you so much for all you're doing.
Yes, thank you so much. It was a very real pleasure having a conversation with you today. Thank you so much.